Hello, I'm David Currie and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Thursday the 6th of November. And today we are all about a big night of European action.
Fires it across! It's touched home and there's no flag! And Callum Osmond has his first Celtic goal! It is Celtic 3, 10-man Rangers 1!
Are Danny Röhl's Rangers ready for Roma? Can they recover from their Hampden heartbreak to revive their Europa League campaign?
Kutesa's into the box now, he's taken a lovely touch and he's taken a lovely finish to make it 6-0. AEK Athens rubbing salt into the Aberdeen wounds.
After an awful night in Athens, Aberdeen are in Cyprus to play Conference League high flyers Larnaca.
Hadn't realised that there was a European game so quickly, and just looking forward to it.
And 20 years later, Martin O'Neill leads Celtic in a European match again as they take on Europa League leaders Midtjylland.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Hello folks, today's fellow podcasters are John Walker, coach and analyst, and Scott McDermott, Daily Record sports writer. Welcome, gentlemen. Plenty for us to get into today. We've got 3 European games and the Traitors final later on, but we won't go to the Traitors. Much as I'd love to, I'd stick with you faithfuls, and let's talk about Rangers, shall we? Time, John, to put the Hampden heartache and, let's be honest, the rancour with the refereeing behind them tonight.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a worse opponent to be facing tonight than Roma. I watched the game on Sunday night against AC Milan. They were very unlucky in the first half. A very good side. I was surprised because I hadn't really watched Roma yet this season. I'd seen that they were quite low scorers, so I felt that might at least lean on something for Rangers. But they've still got Dovbyk, Dybala, Evan Ferguson. They've got a plethora of talent up front that I think if it clicks, I almost feel like Rangers are the perfect opponent for them to be facing just now, which is a bit of a problem.
Good news for you because Ferguson and Dybala are out. They won't be playing. There you go. That's cheered you up today.
So just Dovbyk then. Just Dovbyk, Pellegrini, just them two playing up top.
But Scott, they've not been great in the Europa League. They've only got 3 points. Lost to Victoria Pilsen.
No, they've not been great in Europe. But as John says, they're joint second in Serie A. I don't really know what Roma's kind of mindset or mentality is this season. Are they kind of prioritising the league? I'm not so sure. I'd be surprised. There'll be a coach like Gasperini who has obviously won the Europa League in the past with Atalanta. No, it's a kind of competition he's really familiar with and likes. So I'd be surprised if they were kind of put all their eggs in one basket. But a bit like John says, Rangers are maybe the perfect opponents for Roma. Or they might be looking at it that way because they need to get the Europa League campaign back on track. And given the fact that Rangers have lost their first 3 games, and aren't in a great place at the moment, then it's a game both teams go into really having to win. It's a kind of must win for both of them. So I think that makes it really interesting.
What do you think the impact, Scott, might be of that defeat at Hampden on Sunday on Rangers? Will it be a dent to their confidence?
I think it'll be a dent, especially given they'd won the last 2 games under Danny Röhl and look to be on a kind of upward trajectory again. I think you touched on it at the start. They do need to get over the whole, that feeling of injustice about what happened at the weekend. One thing's for sure, I think if their goalie gets kicked in the head in a European tie, the opponent will probably get a red card. That's for certain. No, they do need to put it behind them. I think they will take positives from the second half performance at Hampden. We spoke to Danny Röhl yesterday, and he said that there were positives to take from it. Of course, he'll have been disappointed by how they started against Celtic and ultimately the end result. But that second 45, the way Rangers got back into it with 10 men, the way it kind of changed the shape, the performance of some individuals to get them back into it, they have to try and take some of that into the Roma game. But it's tough, David, that I kind of feel for the manager, just the situation he's in, because obviously they've lost the first 3 games, a tough opponent in Roma, and in this competition in previous years, the crowd have played a massive part. The Ibrox crowd in the Europa League, but that's when they felt there was real momentum in it. They felt as if they had a chance of going far in the competition. I think it's going to be tough to get that kind of atmosphere against Roma. It's really going to be up to the players to get the crowd going rather than the other way about. So it's a tough task for them. And especially as we're talking about what priorities Roma have, I think this season Rangers' priority now has to be the league. So it's a balancing act again for them in terms of team selection, because ultimately Dundee away at the weekend is probably I would suggest probably a more important game in terms of getting them back up at the Premiership table.
You go along with that, John?
100%. I've felt this way for probably about 4 seasons now. The European runs have been fun, they've been enjoyable, but I don't remember ever. I know I was a kid in Walter Smith's first run, but I don't ever remember.
Oh, steady. You made me feel old here.
I don't ever remember feeling a void of not performing in Europe when we were winning the 7th, 8th and 9th titles in a row. And the same with Alex McLeish. I never felt that we were missing this massive European run when we famously could never get past Christmas. You were quite happy with your trophies domestically, and that's kind of where Rangers fans will poke at Celtic fans about the amount of knockout ties have not won. Celtic have won unprecedented amount of titles that we would happily have in our back burner making those jokes. So I would have been happy to have been knocked out of the playoffs in Europe and taking our licks and not having the £12 million you could make if you get to a European semi-final through the Europa League and taking the title race. The problem we've got is you're going to these games and just getting no faith in Europe. I'm worried about Dundee away, even if we did rest players for this as it stands, because I think Dundee are actually proven when they're up against Rangers or Celtic, they know kind of how to nullify us a little bit. Yeah, it's like Scott said, that there's been a past of going to European games, didn't matter how you were playing, you were kind of up for it, you were buzzing, you'd have been making plans to meet your pals in town for 4 o'clock after work, and now it's a bit, shall I stay home and watch Traitors?
You can watch Traitors on the iPlayer later on. That's what I'll be doing. But interestingly, Scott, you were saying you were at the media conference yesterday, the pre-match with Danny Rule, and I noted he was talking about Rangers taking the next steps in terms of possession, pressing and finishing. It shows he's very much putting it out there that this is the beginning stages of a work in progress.
100%. I think he's only been in the job still. Feels like he's been there longer. I think he's only been in the job just over 2 weeks. And he actually said yesterday, it was interesting, he said he felt he needed a minimum 3 weeks in the job to at least kind of almost do a kind of assessment of the squad and where they were, and even suggested he was filing some kind of dossier on the whole squad that he was going to then put to the club during the international break. Still a work in progress, 100%. But I think there's been good signs under Danny Rule. That's what I say. I feel for him a bit, because obviously it's a dual firm game. The red card, he's had to navigate these European ties that he could have probably done without, when the priority has to be the league. But I think even in those 2 league victories, I'm sure John will agree, the kind of tactical switch, shifting the formation and the system, I think you have seen different, or you've seen an improvement certainly in the kind of pressing that he wants to see in terms of the intensity and the tempo that they play at. So it has been small steps. Obviously Sunday was a setback, and of course Roma's a whole different challenge for them. But he'll want to see improvements again, and I think it is about taking small steps for them to get to where he wants them to go. But they're still a million miles away from, I'm sure, what Danny Rule will feel one of his teams looks like.
Guys, put you on the spot. How's it going to go tonight? You first, John.
Roma will win. Roma will win tonight. I just think they've Matty Soul, who's not really performed yet since moving for Juventus permanently. They've got too much talent, and if it all goes right, to click. You've got Dovbyk, who was second top scorer in La Liga 2 years ago with Girona, Pellegrini. So there's too much talent for that squad. Just the way we've been just now, I think Roma 2-1. I think this could be a game that's got potential to be like Lyon last year. I don't think Roma's got anyone of Ryan Cherky's ability, but I think this could be a game that gets away from us quickly, especially with the kind of anxiety and the way the fans are a little bit going to games. I think Roma will win this.
Scott?
I tend to agree. Unfortunately, we had to do our predictions for the paper yesterday, and I was surprised a lot of the other boys fancied Rangers to get at least a point, but I'm struggling to see how Rangers go and win this. Just in terms of where they are, in terms of role, having to kind of juggle the squad again, and what I was saying about the crowd, I just think it'll be hard. Look, if the crowd's up for it, Rangers go off to a good start, get an early goal, who knows? They certainly need it, not to try and get this European campaign back on track, but as John said, I just think Roma's going to have too much. Rangers have already been beaten by three far lesser teams than Roma, so I think Rangers are going to struggle to get anything for the game.
Let's talk about Aberdeen then. A big game for the Dons, bottom of the Europa Conference League. 2 defeats there away to Larnaca of Cyprus, who have 6 points, are sitting second in the table. This is a big one for Jimmy Tillene and the Dons. John, they need to kind of try to resuscitate their Conference League campaign, don't they? I noticed yesterday at the presser he was saying, you've got to believe we can still qualify for the knockout stage.
I think that's it. I think the Athens match, aside from kind of Aberdeen's recent form, would have slightly been improving on what the start of the season was like. I think that is a concern. I think what I had felt watching like the qualifiers in Europe, with the way Hibs had performed in a couple of their games, I'd actually felt like Scottish clubs were maybe actually improving in Europe. I thought there was like potential for us to maybe have a little bit of a go, Celtic to kind of join the party and Rangers to keep doing what they had been doing. I think Aberdeen, Rangers and Celtic have kind of proven that we're in danger of falling behind a little bit here. Our domestic league looks as competitive as it's ever been. I think it's got the most quality on average across the board, technically, tactically. But I think what we're seeing in Europe is we're potentially getting left behind a little bit by Greek, Cypriot, Danish, Austrian, all the nations we were up against. I watched the Chelsea-Karabag match last night. I watched Paphos-Villarreal. I'm a little bit worried we're in a little bit of danger of being left behind here. And unfortunately for Aberdeen, I say AEK and Larnaca is another team that's going to prove that point, that whilst our league seems to improve, it's maybe a dip in overall quality against everyone else. And I think Aberdeen are going into this more in hope than expectation. I think that's more what we're looking at.
Scott, instinctively when Aberdeen are away to a team in Cyprus, you think, oh, that should be all right. But then when you do your research and you look into it, they've beaten Crystal Palace 1-0, they beat AZ Alkmaar 4-0. They're going great guns.
It's incredible, you're totally right. In the past, you'd have looked at Cypriot football and thought, oh, no, we'll be better than them. But no, there's a lot of money in Cypriot football now. It's certainly improved the last few years. If you look at some of the clubs' European results, as you say, Larnaca, I mean, going to Palace and winning, I mean, at that point, nobody could beat Palace the way they were going. So to go to Selhurst Park, win 1-0 was a massive result for them. As John says, I think it's going to be really tough for Aberdeen. I know they've picked up slightly the last 2 away games. Obviously, the Premiership, they've got good 1-0 wins. No, they'd bite your hand off for that again. Going to Larnaca, but it's going to be tough. I don't know if there might still be scars for that night in Athens, which was a kind of chastening experience for them. So again, it almost feels like domestically it has to be the priority for Aberdeen, just to try and get back on track and get up the table. And as you say, I mean, it shouldn't happen, but you're looking at that game trying to give a prediction. I just see Aberdeen going there and winning, which probably tells you, as John says, it kind of tells you where we are in terms of Scottish clubs in Europe at the minute.
Scott says there might be scars from that game in Athens, John, but Jimmy Tillene would probably say not scars, just experience and lessons learned.
I think
it'll not happen again.
I think when you talked about Danny Rowe's dossier earlier on, I think things like experiences are things that get noted. I think you only really know how a player will react when Aberdeen drop 1-0 down to Larnaca tonight and see what the reactions compared to AEK Athens. I think Aberdeen's only chance is to hang in here as much as possible. The scar tissue will be there. If they concede an early goal, the players have experienced what happened in Athens a few weeks ago. It's just going to be the same again. So as long as they can hang in, it's still football. It's still football. As much as Larnaca's last 2 results have been good, they get absolutely battered off Brann in the playoffs 4-0 at home. And I know Rangers got battered as well, but when I look at domestic games and go, there's probably not 4 and 3 goals between Aberdeen and Rangers. It just really depends. Paphos beat Villarreal last night in the Champions League at home. Larnaca knocked out Paphos in the Cup at the weekend. I find it really hard sometimes to contextualise domestic football comparisons to when they play other teams, but I just don't see how Aberdeen come out of this with anything.
Mind you, the Larnaca manager yesterday at the presser was saying, look, Aberdeen are a good team, and he listed their dangerous players. And when you look at it, you think, oh, you know what? Aberdeen have got some, they've got some quality players there, but you're just kind of waiting for it to click big style. Is that a fair comment?
David, that's what I was going to say. Just in general with Aberdeen, as much as we're bigging up Larnaca and talking about Scottish football, Aberdeen need to produce a lot better. Just in general, they've spent a lot of money up there. Jimmy Tilline's under pressure for the crowd. You've said it there. They've got a lot of big players. You think it likes Stuart Armstrong and Carlson coming in, and spent a lot of money putting that squad together. And they should be going into a game against Larnaca, despite everything we've said. They should still be going into that game thinking, we can go there and take something. And obviously their domestic form should be a lot better given the players they've got. No, just in general, I think the manager is under pressure, and these players need to start producing better than what they've shown this season.
Scott, you're not predicting a win for Aberdeen. John, what about you? I'm getting the sense from what you're saying that you're not going to go with that either.
No, I just see it being... I really do not expect to make it turned over in the way that they've seen a couple of weeks ago. I think this will be a narrow defeat. I would love them to get a draw. I'd love all the clubs to be able to perform something, but the results that they've had at home in Larnaca, I just can't see them not nicking this, like 1-0, 2-1.
Finally, folks, we had a Celtic special yesterday on the Scottish Football Podcast, but once again, we'll look ahead to Celtic's game tonight. They're in Denmark to face Midtjylland, who just happen to be top of the shop in terms of the Europa League. 9 points from their 3 games. Celtic on 4 points from their 3 games. This one should be... I'm predicting this one's going to be absolutely enthralling, almost as enthralling perhaps as a Martin O'Neill media conference, which they've been very entertaining second time around. He seems so relaxed, Scott.
He's loving it, and seems to be loving it. He's ticked off the Old Firm, the Old Firm 1 box, if you like, and now I'm sure as he's turning the clock back, he'd love to go and get an away win in Europe before he eventually leaves the post. If he leaves the post, because he seems to be really enjoying it. His press conference was great. They're obviously going into it in a real high. After Sunday, I see they've included Callum Osman now in the squad after his performance on Sunday, so I think he'll be available. I think taking over for Carter Vickers in the squad is obviously injured, so they'll get into it with real confidence. But as you say, it's not an easy tie. Midtjylland have had some brilliant results in the Europa League so far. So it'll be a big test for Celtic, but as I say, they're getting into it in a high. They'll feel as if they can go over there and get something. I don't think a point would be a bad result for Celtic. I think they'd probably take it, but they'll think they can go there and win. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Martin O'Neill yesterday, obviously, as you would expect, he was asked about his European memories, and Seville comes to mind of 2000, and I'm losing my mind here, 2003 UEFA Cup final when they lost to Porto, and he was like, it's not a great memory. We lost that and it's given him sleepless nights.
No, but it was a brilliant run. You think of the nights they had, Boavista and Liverpool and Blackburn and games like that, and then obviously Seville itself, so it will be bringing back good memories for him. But Martin O'Neill, if you'd have said to him a fortnight ago that he was going to be managing that Old Firm game and then a Europa League tie, he'd have probably laughed, especially being back at Celtic. So it does feel as if he's just savouring every moment of this. And as I say, he would love to, if it is just going to be short term, he'd love to go away and think, well, I went back, I beat Rangers, won in Europe. That would be a great thing for him to say at this stage in his career. So I think he's just lapping it up, but he'll be desperate to get 3 points.
Now, it was interesting what Scott said, John, about Callum Osman being brought into the squad, scored in the semi-final on Sunday. Never really got a look in under Brendan Rodgers. Does his kind of inclusion and how he flourished in that game, does that kind of show Martin O'Neill saying, look guys, this is a different regime, you've all got a chance here, come and show me what you can do?
I think so. I think one of the things that I'd seen from a couple of Celtic friends saying it was a wee bit more direct, a wee bit more playing up to strikers, which unbelievably actually helps centre forwards if you bring them into play earlier. You know what I mean? So somehow that apparently helps centre forwards if they're involved in play more and don't need to see 40 passes before the ball comes up to them. So I think there's just a wee bit of that, because I think you see with Johnny Kenny, I always make the same argument. All these players that get to Rangers and Celtic's quality, whether it's through their internal academies, whether it's through Fulham's academies and the English Premier League academy level, These are all top quality players. Poor quality footballers do not get to the quality of Rangers and Celtic. They just don't. They might then fail when they get to that level because of the pressures at those clubs, because it's a totally different ball game altogether. I think Callum Osman showed, and I think Johnny Kenny's shown, that if you put the ball up to them enough times, they've got ability and quality to bully most centre-halves at the level they'll be playing at. Whether they can go up to European level like tonight, that'll be a different challenge altogether. I actually think both of them have got all the assets to go and perform at this level. I didn't realise you could actually add people at this stage to the squad, so I think that's an absolute no-brainer to get Callum Osman back in there, because I thought when he came on, he struck a little bit of fear into me because he kind of had little bits of everything, maybe not quite as physical as Johnny Kenny, but his willingness to run into channels, which is something that I think strikers have stopped doing en masse anymore. I think just that busyness of being the perfect antidote to what Johnny Kenny brings for most of the game, with his physicality, they're a kind of perfect foil for each other. So if they were ever chasing the game and wanted to win, you could just actually put both of them on and maybe see a Martin O'Neill 3-5-2 like what of old. But I think both of them are really good inclusions, really good options for Celtic to have. I actually think Celtic have a great chance tonight, just from what I've been seeing in the last couple of games.
Martin O'Neill seems to have, in a short term, energised the team. Scott, can we refer to this as the interim boss bounce? Never underestimate the force of a big personality.
I think it is, but I don't think it's just that. I think it is more about his personality rather than just a new manager coming in. Look, I think we're pretty clear. Martin O'Neill won't be in the training pitch doing the coaching. That will be left to Sean Maloney and others. But just his presence, just his aura, it'll just be wee snippets of information and kind of pep talk. I'm sure he's probably the last voice they'll hear before they go out for games. Even some of the pictures you've seen for Celtic training, it seems as if Martin O'Neill, he's always just chatting to one player, and they'll just have an individual talks with guys, which I think, given his experience and what he's done in the game, is absolutely priceless, especially for younger players. So I think all of that put together has just given Celtic that boost the last couple of games, and they'll be hoping it can continue for a wee bit longer.
John, you're more sanguine about Celtic's prospects than you are about Aberdeen and Rangers tonight. Are you predicting a point?
I think Celtic will at least get a point, yeah. I think Celtic have got ability to win tonight. I think even with when I look at their starting 11 against Rangers, I would have said it's as weak as we could have found Celtic. But then you see how they come through that. I know they I think Celtic more dipped in the second half than Rangers improved in the second half. But I think Celtic, the way it started, 11-11, I think Celtic were really strong, really good. After watching Midtjylland against Hibs in a bit more detail, I can't see why Celtic couldn't go and grind out a win. And because they've got quality when they've got the ball. I think what Martin O'Neill's sides will always be, doesn't matter whether he's been out of club football for 6 years, 10 years or 6 weeks, is they'll be very organised defensively and you won't give up too much. So I think Celtic will win this one. I think Celtic could nick this.
Scott, would you like to end proceedings on an optimistic note after starting the podcast off so pessimistically?
Well, if optimistic means a draw, then because I think it might be a draw. I don't know. Celtic did give up chances at the weekend against Rangers. I'm not sure. I know what John says they will be organised, but I still don't think that they're at their best or that they're strongest with the defenders that they've got at the minute. And I think Midtjylland being at home, they'll get chances. But I also think Celtic are capable of scoring as well. So I think the paper I predicted a 2 each, so I better stay with that. I better stick with that.
You've got to be consistent.
Exactly.
Anyway, folks, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Many thanks to John and Scott, and thanks to you for listening. Of course, remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast, bright, breezy and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. All the best, folks. Take care.
On BBC Sounds. From life aboard a Russian submarine to chairman of Hearts Football Club.
At this stage, he was the hero.
But as his controversial decisions escalated...
They said, we're going to sack George. And I'm going, you can't do this.
How did Vladimir Romanov go from Hearts saviour to a wanted man?
They caused a whole load of chaos and havoc.
Romanov, Tsar of Hearts. Listen now on BBC Sounds.